There are 9 candidates in this race, and Lightfoot is facing competition from both her political right and left. Her top competition is former head of Chicago Public Schools Paul Vallis, who's endorsed by the city's police union, Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, who has the backing of the politically powerful teachers union, and Congressman Chuy Garcia, the lone Latino candidate in this race. Now, to win this election outright, a candidate needs more than 50% of the vote, and if they don't do that, this is going to go to a runoff on April 4th, and that is what's expected to happen. And if Lori Lightfoot does not win re-election, she will be the first Windy City mayor in 40 years to not do so. Bill?
Got it. We're watching. Thank you, Garrett. Nice to see you. Garrett Tenney in Chicago.
Yeah. Excited to bring in Axios reporter covering Chicago, Justin Kaufman. So this is your hometown, Justin. Was it like this morning? How do you size it up?
This is Chicago's political Christmas. When we have a mayoral election like this, where the incumbent is not necessarily favored, that it's wide open, that it's anyone's ball game, it's very exciting for political watchers, but also Chicagoans who just really enjoy this time of year when it comes to elections.
Okay, so here's the early voting numbers. This is call for number 1. Put them up here on the screen. This is pretty high, highest in over a decade. Yeah. In 2023, 209,000 people have already voted. In 2019, that was only 100,000. So what do you think that means for Lori Lightfoot's chances of holding on here?
Well, especially some of the wards where some of these mail-in votes and early voting numbers have come in, they're not particularly Lori Lightfoot's stronghold. They're going to be the northwest side, the southwest side. Those are areas in which most of the first responders live, very white wards that traditionally are going to go for a more law and order candidate. That in this case might be Paul Vallis, who is the former schools chief, who has run a campaign that has been strictly public safety first, all public safety, essentially. That's really been what he's been harping. So I think that that's not a good sign for the mayor, but the mayor has spent the last couple of weeks laser focused on the black community in Chicago, on the south and west sides of Chicago, and really has implored that community to come out to vote on election day. The reason that the number is way high, this is the first election post-pandemic. You remember, this 2019 is the last time that there was an election, and now mail-in voting has become all the norm here in Chicago. So the number's way higher because of the fact that people got used to it from the presidential election in 2020 and the midterms in 2022.
We can show here on the screen all the different people that are running against her to try to see if they can figure out a way to either at least force it into a runoff or get her out outright, or she could win re-election. Yeah. Tell me about the issue of crime, how that is playing into this election. Is that the #1 issue?
Yeah. It is. As the reporter mentioned, and there was a poll, a very popular poll here, that talked about public safety and crime is the #1 issue that is facing Chicagoans right now. And it seems to be what has dominated the election cycle. You've seen Paul Vallis, as I mentioned, just every commercial that he puts on TV here locally is all about public safety and crime. Really a referendum on Lightfoot's job as the top mayor, as the leader of Chicago. So it is the #1 issue. I think Chicagoans are somewhat hesitant when a candidate says they can fix crime, because this has been an issue that has not just plagued Lori Lightfoot, the mayors before. I mean, we're talking about, you could go back centuries, but last at least modern times, crime has been high. So we get a little bit skeptical when a candidate comes in and says, I'm going to fix this. But right now it seems to be the issue that's on most voters' minds.
One last very quick question: do you think you'll get results tonight?
Yeah, but there's a concern because of the outstanding amount of ballots that are out, mail-in ballots that are probably going to be postmarked today. The Board of Election has said be concerned and be prepared for a long night, or if not, an election to actually go into the next coming days. Justin
Kaufman, great to have you. Axios Chicago. Appreciate it. Hope to have you back soon.
Thanks, Dana.
Take care.
23 before the hour. Like father, like son, billionaire liberal mega donor George Soros may be staying out of the limelight publicly, but apparently his son Alex is keeping the family's White House connection quite strong. He's making multiple visits during the Biden administration to the White House, and Kelly O'Grady has got details on that. What you find out, Kelly? Hello.
Good to see you, Bill. Yeah, so we know political kingmaker George Soros for his liberal ties, but it seems to be becoming a bit of a family business here. So we dug into his son Alex's activities, and it does appear the billionaire's son has a direct line to the Biden White House. So Fox Digital first reported this. We've then independently confirmed it, that Alex has met with top Pennsylvania Avenue officials 6 times between October 2021 and December 22. For example, the chief of staff at the White House, the deputy national security advisor. But this goes beyond the White House to a larger organized effort to influence the Democratic Party. Alex contributing millions in his own right to liberal causes. Since the 2018 elections, the billionaire's son has poured over $5.7 million into Democratic PACs and campaigns, though directs much more as the deputy chair of the Open Society Foundations. That's his father's liberal-focused charitable organization. Now, we spoke to an author who's performed in-depth research on the Soros family. He says Father George is only the beginning of the liberal donation dynasty.
With Alex, I mean, it is all over his Instagram, his Twitter, his Facebook. It is a who's who of liberal establishment hacks, politicians, pundits. So I would argue, at a minimum, his son is positioned to double the damage his father did.
And indeed, while George Soros was known for keeping a low profile, Alex flaunts those liberal connections. A quick scan of social media shows countless pictures with world leaders and Democratic mainstays. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, meeting with Pelosi close to 10 times and praising her on Instagram as, quote, the greatest speaker that ever lived. And Bill, I'll leave you with this. Alex, in a New York Times interview in 2012, said that he wanted to strike out on his own to avoid being a, quote, lazy trust fund kid. Seems like he decided to go the family business route after all.
No. Kelly, we'll watch it. Thanks. Kelly O'Grady. Thank you.
The pandemic created such a burden on some that we believe that targeted debt relief is a way to get out. And we're confident we're going to prevail here. And we're confident that the American people need this to get back on their feet.
Well, a feisty Randy Weingarten just a few moments ago took the podium outside the Supreme Court. In about 20 minutes, justices will hear arguments on President Biden's student loan bailouts. 6 GOP-led states are suing to block it, and we'll be keeping a very close eye on those arguments. Plus, the new House Committee on China holding its first hearing tonight, with tensions high between Washington and Beijing over that spy flight this month, TikTok spying, and much more. What can we expect? Committee Chair Mike Gallagher, he joins us next. At 67%. You can't get that many people to agree on a Mother's Day resolution in Congress. So what do you think this hearing will be like tonight as you kick things off?
Well, I think we have an opportunity to explain to the American people, to our colleagues, that this isn't a distant threat. This isn't an over-there threat. This isn't a matter of some obscure territorial claim in the East and South China Sea. This is a right-here-at-home threat. This is a threat to American sovereignty. The Chinese Communist Party is the greatest threat we face in the world today. And I'm not just talking about Chinese spy balloons drifting over our nuclear ICBM facilities. On Saturday, I did a rally with human rights groups in front of an illegal CCP police station in the heart of Manhattan, in Chinatown, that was used to harass and surveil Chinese dissidents on American soil. We then met with a group of students, Chinese students, that were harassed and in some cases physically assaulted by CCP sympathizers on American campuses. So we can't ignore the growing dimensions of this threat. And again, it is right here at home. It's a question of what kind of world do we want to live in, and we're hoping to communicate the stakes of this competition tonight. We call it a strategic competition, but it's not a tennis match. It is an existential struggle about what kind of world we want to live in.
Yeah, I want to get to Wuhan in a moment here, but you just mentioned that phrase, strategic competition. There's a reason why that's in that hearing. What does that mean to you?
To me, it means that we compete and win, that we give ourselves the tools necessary to beat the Chinese Communist Party. So there's really 3 dimensions to that. There's an obvious military component. I just went to Taiwan, and it's my observation that we're not moving quickly enough to arm them to the teeth, as well as rebuild our own defenses in the Pacific. There is an ideological dimension, making sure that we aren't unwittingly fueling communist propaganda and losing sight of our own values. And then there's a very complicated economic dimension. We are far too dependent on China for critical goods like life-saving drugs, rare earths, energetics. Obviously, chips is a huge issue. We need to reclaim our economic independence so that we can compete more effectively and ultimately win this competition so that the world doesn't look like Xinjiang going forward.
All right, begins at 7 o'clock tonight. Dana,
well, your hearing is coming just the day after we find out that the Department of Energy says that they have its low level of confidence that the COVID started in a lab and it was leaked. Here is, though, the White House spokesperson, Karine Jean-Pierre, and then John Kirby, the national security spokesperson, saying, well, we can't really be too sure yet. Watch.
There is not a consensus right now in the U.S. government about exactly how COVID started.
I'm not at liberty to confirm the reporting, so I'm not going to do that from here. What I can tell you is, again, there's been no consensus on this, on where COVID originated.
I'd love your thoughts on that, but also how will your committee take this on?
Well, for the life of me, I don't understand why they're downplaying this. It is clear that evidence is stacking up in favor of the lab leak hypothesis. And for 2 years, anyone who said that was called a conspiracy theorist and in some cases a racist. We can't allow this to get in the way of us holding the Chinese Communist Party accountable for covering up the origins of this pandemic. This should also tell us something fundamental about who we're dealing with in the CCP. And that's what my committee will get after.
Okay,
this is a regime that cannot be trusted.
How does the White House gain by sticking with that storyline, there is no consensus?
I fundamentally don't understand it, other than there's so many members of our public health and scientific elite who have for decades pursued cooperation with Chinese scientists, in particular funded gain-of-function research, and they don't want that to stop, and they don't want to admit that they're wrong. If we were acting rationally, we would prohibit all future funding for gain-of-function research, and we wouldn't allow people to experiment with naturally occurring coronavirus to make them more chimeric in a lab. We need accountability. We need to understand how this happens so we can prevent a future pandemic.
All right, Chairman Gallagher, thank you. Thanks for being on the show, and we will be looking forward to a primetime hearing that you're going to have tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In a moment, more dramatic testimony. The Alex Murdaugh double murder trial may be winding down. The defense is rested. We'll take you there in a moment. Plus, the head of the EPA goes back to East Palestine, Ohio again. Can he convince residents there that their community is safe after that toxic train spill?